Right now in America, you can feel it building. World Cup talk in group chats, predictions at work, bars already filling with borrowed adrenaline, screens glowing in living rooms while people speak about teams like something deeply personal is about to happen. And you're sitting in the middle of it, feeling almost nothing. Not disgust, not superiority, not even resistance, just distance. You can get emotional. You stay up too late thinking about people you love. Certain songs still hit somewhere you can't explain. A quiet message can stay with you for hours. So this is not because you're cold. It is not an emotional defect. You are not missing some basic human circuit. You're just not plugged into this particular current. And if you've spent years assuming that says something bad about you, it doesn't. It may say something far more interesting. It may say that your mind does not hand its energy over easily, that it asks a question most people never stop to ask. Out of everything a person could care about this deeply. Why this? Because once you look at it clearly, the strange part is not your distance from sports. The strange part is how much of human emotional life gets poured into it. Entire rooms rising and collapsing over outcomes they cannot influence, played out by people they will never meet, with consequences that disappear by Monday for almost everyone involved. That is not small behavior. That is huge behavior. And if you've been quietly treating your own lack of interest like a flaw, you may have been staring at the wrong mystery the whole time. The mystery is not why you stand outside it. The mystery is why so many people step so completely inside it. Why does a score feel personal? Why does a jersey start to feel like identity? Why does a game begin to carry the emotional weight of something far larger than itself? Because the fastest way to understand why you don't obsess over sports is to understand what sports are actually doing inside the average human brain. The answer starts much earlier than modern life. Earlier than stadiums, broadcasts, betting apps, fantasy leagues, even earlier than nations. It starts with tribes. The human brain was not built for endless choice, abstract systems, and millions of strangers. It was built for smaller circles, for us and them, for shared danger, shared victory, shared survival. Your nervous system still carries that old design. And when a modern sports culture gives it colors, chants, rivals, rituals, watch parties, and a clear side to stand on, something ancient lights up. That is why a game can feel bigger than a game. To an old brain, collective outcomes still matter, not logically, biologically. The body reads shared tension as meaningful. It reads belonging as safety. It reads winning as relief. And that wiring did not disappear when civilization arrived. It just found new uniforms. A scoreboard can still feel like tribal weather to a nervous system old enough to remember that your group once was your future. So no, sports fans are not irrational in some simple way. They are often responding to something very old and very human. The part that wants to belong, to synchronize, to feel held inside a shared emotional reality instead of standing outside it alone. But that still leaves your question. If sports offer tribe, why does that offer land so hard for some people and barely land at all for others? One useful lens is something psychology calls openness to experience, not a label, just a way of noticing where a mind naturally leans. Some minds are more drawn to novelty, complexity, ambiguity, and things that keep changing shape as you get closer to them. They do not necessarily bond through repetition. They do not always come alive inside rituals just because the ritual is shared. That does not mean they feel less. It may mean they need a different kind of spark. Your mind may not reject passion. It may reject pre-scripted passion. It may not be resistant to intensity. It may simply want intensity that feels discovered rather than inherited, chosen rather than handed over by the room. Some people bond through repetition. Others need complexity before emotion really locks in. And sometimes that difference shows up in the body before it shows up in thought. Because for some people, sports are not exciting in a good way. They are tiring. The packed bar, the constant noise, people talking over each other, sudden shouting, the screen demanding your attention every few seconds. For some nervous systems, that does not feel fun. It feels like overload, and this is where people get themselves wrong. When everyone around you seems energized by the room but you feel drained by it, it is easy to assume something is off in you, that you are too serious, too distant, hard to excite. But that may not be true at all. It may just mean your system responds differently to stimulation. What feels electric to one person can feel exhausting to another. That is not weakness. That is not you failing to be human. It may just be accurate calibration, and that is only one part of the story. Because the body is one layer, reward is another. A lot of sports fandom runs on suspense. The maybe, the almost. The swing between hope and disappointment. For many people, that emotional swing is the thrill. The uncertainty keeps them engaged, and when the outcome finally lands, the release feels real. But some people do not get much from outcomes they did not help create. They are not moved by what they did not touch. Their reward system comes alive somewhere else. When they build something, fix something, solve something, improve something, understand something that used to confuse them. For them, satisfaction feels strongest when it comes from effort they can trace back to themselves. That does not make them less passionate. It may just mean they need participation before emotion really locks in. And once that is true, a crowd exploding over someone else's victory can feel strangely empty. Not because they think they are above it, but because their brain keeps asking the same question. What part of this is actually mine? And even reward may not be the deepest difference. Identity may be. You can hear it the day after a big game, at work, at dinner, in a group text. After a win, people say, "We did it. We looked great. We crushed them." But after a loss, the language changes. They fell apart. They blew it. They should have played better. That shift is not random. Psychologists have studied this for years. People move closer to victory and further from failure. The self likes being attached to what feels strong. It likes distance from what feels embarrassing. Sports just make that process very easy. And for a lot of people, that attachment does something important. It gives the self a place to lean, a shared identity, a feeling of being part of something bigger and more solid than one person alone. But not everyone builds a self that way. Some people build identity more privately, through their choices, their standards, their work, their values, through things that still matter even when nobody else is watching. Take the team away, and they are still who they were. That is not arrogance. That is not emotional coldness. It may just be a self that does not need a scoreboard to stay intact. And for some people, there is one quieter layer under even that. Sometimes the issue is not just stimulation, or reward, or identity. Sometimes something about the whole thing simply starts to feel off. A teacher spending her own money on classroom supplies. An ER nurse finishing another brutal shift. A tired worker getting through another long week. And then all that money, attention, urgency, and spectacle poured into games, stadiums, coverage, and hype. For some people, that contrast sticks. Not as a speech, not as a performance, just as a feeling they cannot fully turn off. And once that feeling is there, it becomes harder to give your attention freely, not because you are judging everyone else, just because some part of you no longer feels fully at peace with the ritual. But here is the harder possibility. Everything I just said may be true. The sensitivity, the need for complexity, the preference for earned satisfaction, the more private identity, the discomfort with spectacle, all of that may be real, and it can still become a place to hide. A trait can be true and still protect you too much. Because the same qualities that keep you from getting pulled into shallow emotion can also keep you from investing deeply anywhere. A preference for depth can become a reason never to begin. Stability can become a reason never to risk disappointment. Sensitivity can become a habit of stepping back before anything gets close enough to matter. And that is where this stops being about sports. Because the deeper question is no longer, why doesn't this move me? The deeper question is, what does? What in your life has real stakes? What asks something from you? What could disappoint you because you actually showed up for it? What could leave a mark because your effort, your hope, or your identity were truly involved? Some detachment is wisdom. But some detachment is just a life that never let itself be tested. An identity is not proven by staying untouched. It is proven by contact, by risk, by effort, by caring enough that the outcome matters. If that already exists somewhere in your life, then your distance from sports may simply be your distance from this one kind of emotional ritual. But if it does not, then what looks like personality may be something else. It may be a habit of non-entry. But here is the harder possibility. Everything I just said may be true. The sensitivity, the need for complexity, the preference for earned satisfaction, the more private identity, the discomfort with spectacle, all of that may be real. And it can still become camouflage. A trait can be true and still become a hiding place. Because the same qualities that keep you from getting pulled into shallow emotion can also keep you from investing deeply anywhere. A preference for depth can become avoidance. Stability can become a refusal to risk disappointment. Sensitivity can become a habit of leaving early, stepping back, keeping one foot outside the room before anything inside it has the chance to matter. That is the part people usually do not ask. It is easy to say, sports do not move me, fine. But what does? What in your life has real stakes? What asks something from you? What could disappoint you because you actually showed up for it? What could leave a mark because your effort, your hope, your identity were truly involved? Because an identity is not proven by staying untouched. It is proven by contact, by caring enough to be changed, by risking enough to be disappointed, by staying long enough for something to become real. Some detachment is wisdom. Some detachment is just a life that never allowed itself to be tested. So that is the deeper question underneath this whole video. Not whether sports reach you, whether anything does, whether there is somewhere in your life where you are fully invested, somewhere you have skin in the game, somewhere loss would hurt because the thing itself mattered, not because a room told you it should. If the answer is yes, then your distance from sports is probably exactly what it looks like. A difference in wiring, a difference in meaning, a difference in what your mind is willing to hand its emotional energy to. But if the honest answer is no, then what looks like personality may be something else. It may be a habit of non-entry. And that distinction matters, because if you are invested somewhere real, then not obsessing over sports is not absence. It is not a missing circuit. It may simply be a different way of finding meaning, regulating emotion, and deciding what deserves your attention in the first place. Not caring is not emptiness when your attention has standards. You do not need to perform interest to prove you are alive. You do not need to borrow the room's emotion to prove you can feel. And you do not need to force yourself into rituals that leave you cold just to seem normal to people who never stop to ask why those rituals move them so much. Your mind may simply ask a stricter question. Does this deserve my attention? And if this felt familiar, tell me what never really reached you: the game itself, the crowd around it, or the ritual everyone else seemed to understand. And if you often feel out of step with what moves everyone else, there's another video here that goes deeper into that.